Good morning. I'm Steve Levy with Ipsos Canada, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to this first of a new 10-part webinar program on the path forward in what are surely unprecedented times. A few quick housekeeping measures to start. First, you will all remain in listen-only mode. You can submit questions by simply clicking on the questions button, and in doing so, your questions will be submitted privately to our team. Now, time permitting, we will answer those questions at the end of this session. But if we do run out of time, we will send you an email with the answer to your question. Today's webinar is going to be recorded and it will be posted on our website in the next 48 hours. The Path Forward webinar program is intended as a thought-sharing platform that is going to cover business issues that should be relevant to both you and your organizations. Between now and mid-June, we're going to be sharing perspectives on the food landscape and how it's changing, the use of empathy and how tone is being used to help manage communication, and why brands should be embracing innovation in times of downturn. Now, at Ipsos, we've been running weekly COVID tracking studies since the beginning of March here in Canada, and in fact, in 13 markets around the world. I have to tell you that in my entire career, I have never seen behavioral and attitudinal shift on a weekly basis. Most recently, what we're seeing is that Canadians have slowly come to grips with the pandemic and what it means for each of us personally. What we're now observing is both sentiment and behavior are starting to stabilize and to adjust. With an 8-week lead, China is ahead of us as they start to show signs of opening up, something that I'm sure that all of us are very much looking forward to. We felt that what better way to launch this program of webinars than to invite our colleague, David Rao, the Managing Director of Ipsos in China, to share his perspective on the Chinese market and to set the stage for what we might expect in the next few weeks. David's joining us from our office in Shanghai, where it is 11 p.m. tonight. David, thank you very much for joining us, and over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Steve. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is David Rao. I'm from Ipsos in China. It's my great pleasure to be the webinar's guest speaker to share with you our observation and the learnings from China market. So in my today's presentation, I will mainly cover 3 things. First thing is about our observation of the significant changes in the consumer's behavior and attitudes. And especially during the later stage of the recovery, during the early stage of the recovery period, we do witness some signals which shows that some of those behaviors may be changed back after the crisis, but many will not. And secondly, we will compare the epidemic with 17 years ago's SARS period. And also we will see that the spike pattern, whether it will happen in China and last, or it will be a slow recovery period. And thirdly, I will talk about what we observe the brands and manufacturers did during the COVID-19, what worked well, and how brand can play a critical role during the whole epidemic, and what kind of stories they can deliver, and we can learn from those brands. So to begin with, I would like to give you a very quick update about China's current situation. So I read the news this morning. It is reported that throughout China, there are only less than 1,700 cases left. And in the city I'm living in Shanghai, there are only 100 cases left now. So started from mid-March, and we can see a lot of provinces gradually downgrade the health warning signal levels, and then citizens gradually back to the normal life. And throughout China, we also see till now we have a very high work resumption rate. For most of the province, the work resumptions has exceeded 90%. And the same across all the industries, especially the retail industry. We can see almost all the stores are now open. Here are some photos I took 2 days ago in Shanghai, which show you how we're back to a normal life. So on the top left-hand side, you see the photos when people walk into the subway. So you can see that, of course, everyone wear face mask, and they need to pass the automatic temperature checking system. And on the right-hand side is a shopping mall next door to our office building. You can see it's still very much empty. 2 girls wear face masks chatting there. And on the bottom hand side, you see the photos of our office building, that when you enter the office building, you need to get temperature checked, and also you need to show a green barcode. So I'm going to show you my green barcode on my mobile phone. So this is software everyone need to install in their PC. So that linked with your mobile phone number. If it turns to green, that means you have no restriction, you can go anywhere. But if it shows yellow, that means that you may just come back from overseas or from those high-risk areas, or you have family members who have the disease. So you will be in the quarantine period. If it shows red, then definitely you need to stay in hospital. You can't go out. So this kind of systems allowed the government to have a more strict control on the disease situation and allow us to back to a more safe life situation. It has been a long period, and now people back to the normal life, and we are trying to connect all those dots together, try to build the scenarios to do some forecasts to see what are the changes and behavior and mindset throughout the whole process, especially in recent several weeks during the recovery. We are closely monitoring those early signals. So we can see that actually consumers really go through 6 stages of a variety of emotional states. In the beginning, they have disbeliefs, uncertainties, and suddenly they found that disease is so close to themselves, and they jump into a preparation mode, changing their travel plans, stocking up suppliers, and also try to buy whatever they can get from the supermarket. And then they go to the adjust mode, and then make sure that they adjust themselves well and get used to the new daily life routines, and then tolerate the boring life, stay at home. And then when gradually move to the recovery stage, there were anticipations to the new life, and as well as anxious about the financial crisis, also the second wave of the disease. So in the early stage of the disease, we see a lot of uncertainties, panics, as well as stock buying activities. There were a lot of news and fake news, rumors, and people suddenly jump into a preparation mode. And during that time, we do witness a lot of brand switching activities, because consumers want to stock up the products. So when they go to the market, if they don't find their preferred brand, they will buy the famous brand or whatever brand they can find on the shelf. So there are a lot of forced brand switching activities during that period. And after the government and authorities, the central government, take over the management of the epidemic, now citizens started to realize the situation and form a more consistent view towards the outbreak. And by that time, Wuhan, the center of the disease, was formally locked down. And also the rest of the province and cities also implemented certain level of restrictions and request consumers to stay at home. During the early stage, when people at home, we found all these consumers are very proactively to seek for clear information. So they go to the online medias, for example, WeChat, which is a Chinese version WhatsApp, and as well as Weibo, which is a Chinese version Twitter, to seek more information. And during that period, we witnessed a lot of media behavior changes. For example, some consumers, they traditionally rely on TV and radio news. And then now they found that TV and radio news is too slow. So they switched to the online medias to get the news instantly. At the same time, consumers learn to cross-check different channels to validate those news. And during the early stage of stay-home period, and we also find that people may spend more time on the hobbies they are expert. For example, they cook their favorite dish from scratch, or they read their favorite books. These kind of behaviors give people a sense of control over those small aspects of their life. And during that period, we see that consumers try to stick to their familiar brands. And maybe they wanted to minimize the post-purchase regret during the uncertainty period. It does show that people, the consumers, want the familiarity and want to seek control over the environment during the uncertainties. Most people adjust their mood very quickly and seek for new funds. So most of people, when they stay at home, they found that they said their needs are still satisfied. The only thing they feel unsatisfied is the inability to go outside, which results that in recent weeks, we see a huge bounce back of people's outdoor activities. And their emotions have tensions shifts in time. And also throughout the day-to-day, we witness the upside and the downside of the emotional changes. And that kind of unstable emotional feeling also triggered a lot of impulse purchase behaviors. And when we read people's comments on the e-commerce platforms, very interestingly, we find a lot of impulse purchase. For example, when people said that, oh, I finally make my decision to buy the TV for myself because I found that I need to treat myself well. And also we see a lot of consumers because they feel bored when stay at home. So they proactively seek novelties in the online platform and do a lot of novelty shoppings. Of course, there's enhanced concern towards health, with the particular concern towards the ability of control in the short term. And also people get worried about getting infected or lack of the medical suppliers. And these kind of conscious towards the health and concerns directly result into consumers' behavior to buy insurance. I just read the recent report. The Insurance Association announced that in Q1 this year, the total insurance revenues increased about 2%, but the health insurance increased more than 20% in Q1 this year. And our recent survey also shows that now more than 60% of the consumers showed willingness to consider purchase health insurance. And more than 50% of the consumers said that they may plan to purchase family insurance. This is significantly a high figure compared with the insurance still have relatively low penetration in China. The epidemic is also stimulating changes in the social value as well. So beyond the health, people now realize the importance of a peaceful life and family and the natures. A lot of people said that, oh, when I stay online, when I stay at home, I suddenly realized how good it is. And finally, I get time to talk to my family members or enjoying the time with my kids. You know, in the past 10 years, China really lived in a very fast speed. And this is the first time that people get slowed down and to rethink, review their values, and review and think about the work-life balance. So these kind of changes did change their mindset, and we will say that it will impact their behaviors in future. When we ask consumers about how they feel about the economic recovery, and we found that Chinese consumers do have very strong belief that although the economic may get impacted by the epidemic, but economic will get recovered in the second half of the year. This is still not the latest figure. The latest figure slightly goes down because of the widespread of the disease throughout the world. But overall, Chinese consumers still feel very confident about the government can control the disease. And they said that they believe China will be the first country who step out of the disease and get economic recovery within the year. However, when we ask their personal feelings, a lot of people are concerned about their personally get infected and worry about the financial security. We can see that nearly half of the consumers said that they worry the risk of getting a pay cut or have a career slowdown in the near future. So to wrap up, we can see that consumers do have changes in their behavior. The less outdoor activities, for example, people get used to work remotely, that will change their patterns as well. And also we witness the media shift behaviors. People rely more on the online medias and learn to cross-check different media channels. And we see that people moved to online shopping and online social as well. And as I said, that we do witness some brand switches, especially in the early stage, they were forced to switch the brand, or in the later stage of the lockdown period, there's brand switches because people want to seek for novelties. At the same time, we see the changes in consumers' attitude. They cherish more about life and families, change their social values, especially those high-tier city consumers. And there's enhanced conscience towards the health, as well as the concerns and worries about the personal impact. In the early stage of the disease, there's a lot of voice trying to compare this kind of COVID-19 situation with 17 years ago, what we experienced in SARS. But in the later stage, recently, we found that it's not comparable, because the number of people affected by the COVID-19 is more significantly higher than that of during the SARS period. And now the China market is also more integrated with the global market. And the recent figures also show the same. Chinese government just announced the Q1 GDP figure. It's down 6.8%. And not like the SARS period, only the service industry get impacted. But this time, the agriculture industry and also the manufacturers also get double-digit decline, which also shows that the COVID-19 situation is much worse than the SARS period. We do witness a spike pattern in some of the categories in the recent few weeks. One of the interesting news is you can see that the Guangzhou Hermes flagship store sold $2.7 million within 1 day when the store reopened. And also during early this month, in the traditional Chinese Tong Swimming Festival, a lot of scenery places was very crowded, full of people. But we feel that this might just be a release of the accumulated purchase intention. Especially in the recent couple of weeks, we still see a slowdown pace. For example, in the photo I just showed you in the beginning, you see in the shopping malls still a very empty situation. And we believe it might take a long way until everything gets to normal. It will definitely be a slow recovery process. Next, I'm talking about the impact to the business. And of course, we can see that the impact to business is significant. For example, in the carting industry, it is estimated more than 500 billion yuan lost during the Q1. And actually, in the past couple of weeks, we see the situation even getting worse, because when all the restaurants are closed, they get subsidies from the government, and they don't need to pay the staff fee. But now, back to the normal situation, the restaurants are reopened, they have to pay the staff fees, the rental fees, but they do not get enough consumers to the restaurant, which make the things worse. So in the past couple of weeks, we do see those restaurants experience a more difficult situation, and some restaurants even go bankrupt. And in the same situation we see in the tourism and transportation industry. So in the surveys, consumers say that they will delay their plans to travel internationally, or even they will be very cautious about the domestic travel because there's concerns about the second wave of the disease. And also people get used to work from home and have meetings remotely. So a lot of business now seriously thinking whether the business travel is necessary. I have friends who work in the travel industry and told me that some of the business already said that they will, one of the reasons is cutting costs, and the other reason is they will seriously review whether those business trips are necessary. So that will have significant impact to the transportation categories in the long term. And the same long-term impact we also see in the retail industry, of course, because during the lockdown period, people have to stay at home. And China enjoying a very sophisticated delivery system. For the goods you purchase online, and you can get the goods within 48 hours, and in the big cities, even within 24 hours. So during the lockdown period, people moved their shopping behaviors to online. They really enjoy this kind of fast delivery system. And in a recent survey, when we asked consumers after the disease, what kind of shopping behavior changes they will have, more than half of the consumers say they will stay with the current shopping behaviors or even shopping more online. So obviously, this generates a significant impact to the offline retail environment. And the same, we see a significant decline from the automotive industry. In Q1, the car volume sales declined more than 40%, especially the local brand. So in the beginning of the epidemic, there's some assumptions that people will realize how critical it, how good to own a private car. So maybe they will trigger some purchase. But during a later stage, because of the financial crisis, and we see a lot of consumers claim that they will delay the big spendings, especially for those second-time car buyer or the car upgrade buyers. They will plan to delay the spendings. So when we interviewed the expert in the automotive industry, we were told that they are not that optimistic about this year's recovery, and they forecast this year will have a decline trend versus 2019. But of course, that there are also some categories we see a growth trend throughout the whole crisis. For example, the hygiene and the healthcare categories. The hygiene category used not to be a routine purchase item, but now every family put them into a routine basket purchase. And the same as the nutrition category, because of the enhanced concern towards the health. And we can see those daily supplementary products and which have the immunity benefits now become a high potential category as well. And same as the skincare category as well. Before the seminar, I had talked with my colleagues, and we were talking about that the weather is getting warm, but still we have to wear face masks in China. and we expect that it still be a long way until we can take off the face mask. So there are a lot of girls now seriously think about to increase the usage of the skincare product to take care of their faces. And the same as the cosmetic industry, actually we got a polarized result because the reduce of the outdoor activities, some of the consumers say they will reduce the usage of cosmetics. But on the other hand, that a lot of consumers say that it will remain or even increase the usage of cosmetic product, but shift the categories because they no longer use the lipsticks, but they will use other cosmetic products. So in the cosmetic industries, we also see a huge potential by the category shifting. The epidemic also accelerated the whole digitalization in many industries. For example, one of the booming area is the online education, because all the schools are still closed. So the students have to learn by themselves through the online education. And the government also encourage the local schools to video record their lessons and broadcast through the online education APPs. So online education definitely become a booming area because of the disease. And another area is the e-commerce platform. Not only the big e-commerce platform, but also those niche APP e-commerce platforms or specialized areas also accelerate the whole digitalization. And another interesting phenomena is those areas traditionally we think definitely should be done offline, also moved to online. For example, cloud-based experience. People now visit museums online and go to those, listen to those operas online, or even listen to the live DJs online. Because all the bars are closed. Traditionally, people have to go to the bars to listen to the music and DJs. But now those famous bars launched the DJ live streams, let consumers to listen to the music online while enjoying the drinks at home, share the photos, share the videos with their friends. And that become a new trend among the young generation. So those kind of digitalized cloud experience become a new area for a lot of industries and for consumers. So we can see that the time of the crisis presented many changes and many opportunities to the business. So they can also act as an accelerator or agent for the change. So Chinese brands do fastly react during the whole epidemic period. The first thing they do is to take the social responsibility to directly donate monies or medicines, medical device to government or to Wuhan, to the hospital. And we see that the Chinese consumers, the public in China, do believe that those major brands should have a social obligation to their consumers. And those brands also changed their message delivery. Big brands start to support the social actions and focus on delivering the message of empathy and a sense of helpness. So they enforce the consumers' trust to these big brands. And on the left-hand side, you see another example that a famous alcohol brand that they changed their online campaigns by encouraging consumers to gather with friends online and record these shared moments, try to connect with their consumers emotion-wise. By the way, the alcohol industry also had huge impact from the disease, especially the premium alcohols, because in China, those premium alcohols usually be consumed in the business occasions or the gathering occasions. But during the Spring Festival, it was a lockdown period, so the premium alcohol gets significantly impacted and have a significant decline. And we see because of the social distance and people reduced outdoor activities, these kind of decline will remain for a certain long period. The brands also smartly use a lot of PR activities to engage consumers and drive buzz during the COVID-19. For example, one of the famous hotpot chain store Haidilao, they increased the price during the recovery period. But because they are so famous, and when they increase the price, they will earn the spotlight of the consumers, and a lot of people complained about it. So they decide to return the price to normal and make a very big public apologize, tell their consumers saying, we know it's a difficult period, so we will observe the cost internally, and we want to stay with you together during this difficult period. And another interesting story is a local house appliance manufacturer, Glance. They rent a plane to pick up the employees from local province to send them back to work and broadcast it lively. This echoed the government's request for all the manufacturers to back to work. So you can see that different brands do those PR activities differently, but overall they deliver a very positive message to connect with their consumers and to build a brand trust to their consumers. We also see a lot of brands started to stretch to the new areas. For example, the beauty brand like Trendo or One Leaf, they all move to the sanitized product, which have a huge potential in the future. And not only of them, but also some car manufacturers also moved to these categories. They announced that they would cooperate with suppliers to produce face masks and other disinfection suppliers. But for them, by doing these kind of thing, it's not because they want to make profit of them, but it's more like a social responsibility point of view. Because, for example, Wuling, who is a very famous local car manufacturer, their brand image is that they tell that whatever the citizen want, they will produce. So by moving to produce face masks is a PR activity to show that they are really connect with consumers' needs. And we witness accelerated development on the new offers, especially in the high-tech industry. For example, the e-commerce big giant Tmall launched an AR makeup trial system to let consumers to trial the different product by using the AR technologies. And it worked very well because all the local retail chain stores, offline retail chain stores are closed. So people get used to shop online. And now this kind of technologies let consumers get the chance to test the product. And another booming area is the online medical device, including the online drugstores, online disease Q&As, and online hospital systems. So those kind of online medical service, because all the hospitals are shut down during the epidemic period, get very popular and now be widely used by the citizens. And we also see brands and manufacturers start to develop the new promotion activities and channels. For example, L'Oréal Paris launched a new marketing campaign to encourage consumers to have a New Year hair color by DIY hair color styles at home. So this increased interest because consumers, when they stay at home, they really feel bored. And another example is during the epidemic, a local cosmetic brand chain store, Ling Qingxuan, quickly switched all shopping guides to online working mode, pushing the sales through the WeChat communities and live streams by using the online celebrities or even their staff to sell the product. And their sales recovered very quickly in the first quarter. And this is not an isolated case. Actually, we witness very similar cases in other categories as well. What we found is those companies who have internet DNA deeply rooted in the company culture or who already moved to online react very fast than those companies that traditionally rely on the offline channel. So we also see our clients in China are doing the things, respond to things very quickly. In the beginning, they paused all the campaigns, be very cautious on the message delivery. But soon they found that it's still necessary to deliver the messages and keep communicate with their consumers. So they review their brand values, messagings at the filter of COVID-19, try to do more PR activities to connect with their consumers. And during the recovery period, now they are working with us to reaccessing and understanding the new COVID-19 consumer needs. And we work with them to join the dots together to build the new scenarios, try to predict what might happen in consumers' behavior changes and what does it mean to the specific categories. So here are my suggestions to all of you. The first thing is definitely we will need to stay close with our consumers. We are now in a changing period. So the consumers' emotional needs, functional needs all changes. And we will need to stay close with them to get connected with them, and as well as to understand their changing needs. And secondly, we will need to be innovative to cope with those changing needs. Not only means that we will need to develop certain product or service, but just think outside the box to see what we can do throughout the communication, throughout the product, just be innovative in the changing worlds. And thirdly, we will need to balance consumers' desire of familiarity and for the novelty. As I mentioned earlier, during the uncertainty period, we do see that consumers have a tend to keep a similarity purchase behavior. But at the same time, they also open to new things and seek novelties to which can satisfy their changing needs. So to the brand, how we can balance the design for the familiarity and for novelty is one of the critical topics. And the last but not least, we will need to move fast because we are in the changing worlds. What we observed in China is for those brands who react fast and move fast, does get first recovered from the economic crisis. Well, that's all for my presentation. And we trust that the good day will finally pass and the new world with new market and new consumers will come soon. Well, thank you.
Well, David, I am reassured by your opening comments that the work resumption rate is now at 90%, because I think many of us are itching to get back to where it is we work. At the same time, I'm concerned by your comments relating to how the economy is going to recover slowly, and that in fact some things are actually getting worse. And I'm intrigued by the notion of permanency versus temporary changes, which is a good segue, excuse me, to the first question that many people have on this call, which is whether or not you think that the behavioral changes that you've seen in China are really permanent or temporary. What do you think?
You know, it's still at the early stage of the recovery period. We do see a lot of signals, and we try to use those signals to predict what are the behaviors will change back or what will not. As I mentioned during my presentation, there are some areas we think is not reversible. For example, people's behavior move online. They go to online shopping, they go to online media or online social. So those kind of behaviors is not reversible. And another area I would predict is not reversible is the digitalization. Because of the disease, it accelerated the whole digitalization in many industries, and also as well as consumers' behaviors. And that's also not reversible. In terms of the social distance, to some aspect, for example, people get used to work remotely at home or accept the online education is not reversible. But for the outdoor activities or the, for example, the entertainment areas, depends on how fast people can get back to the normal life and take off the face masks, and maybe it will be recovered and return to normal.
There's another question, a follow-up question that people have asked on this webinar that relates to the first question, but is much more about whether or not you see specific demographic profiles, perhaps changing their behaviors more than others. Can you comment on that?
That's an interesting question. Actually, we do witness the difference across different generations and across different city tiers. For example, the elder people, they are most reluctant to changes. But because of the epidemic, the city being locked down, they are forced to learn new things. For example, shopping online. So their behaviors changed a lot. And also we see that the mature generation, because they have more life experience, and they also change a lot in their social values in terms of the families and the relationships with the family members, also the work-life balance. So they have more changes in terms of the mindset and attitude than the younger generation. But the younger generation have more behavior changes in terms of the digitalization. So for example, move to the digitalized cloud-based experience. And those things that we see more changes in the younger generation. And the same, we see that in the high-tier cities, people have more value concept changes. Whereas in the lower-tier cities, we witness more behavior changes in terms of the online behavior.
Okay. As we kind of group some of the questions that we've received, one theme is that whether or not marketers have been focusing on brand building, the long, if you like, or on promotion, the short, if you like. What have you seen? Are they focused on the long or the short? And is that changing?
Traditionally in China, especially a lot of local brands, they focus on short-term promotion. They do a lot of promotions on the product's functional benefits, and they run deep promotions from time to time. But because of the disease, we witness a lot of brands start to change their strategies. They realize that it's critical to do more brand building activities to support a positive brand image. And we do find that consumers really enjoying or trust those brands who do the brand building activities. So I think that will be a long-term change. More and more brands will realize it's critical to do the long-term brand building instead of the short-term promotions.
Okay, and related to that, another kind of grouping of questions, if you like, is very much about whether or not companies and brands have been communicating to consumers in different ways during this period, and whether or not that's changing as you kind of come out of the experience.
Yeah, we see that it will be very critical to keep communication during the epidemic period rather than to go silent. And our research also shows that consumers would like to hear from a helpful brand which connect with them, show emphasis, and that's exactly what those Chinese brands are doing. And they build a trust image, an image of taking social responsibilities. And I would say that for those brands who originally in their DNA own this kind of trust and also ownership, take responsibility images done quite easily during the epidemic. But for those brands who do not have that DNA rooted in their brand, it may take time for them to build that kind of brand images. So the tone of the communication will be very important. And the brand needs to show the emphasis, the sense of helpfulness during the epidemic. And also, I think throughout the coming financial crisis, it's important to show their support to the consumers. As the example I raised during my presentation, the hotpot chain store, they decreased the price to show that they are connected with their consumers during this difficult period.
We do have a number of other questions, but we're running out of time. We will answer all of those questions by email. I would like to thank David from Shanghai, where it's now closing in on midnight your time. Our next webinar in this series is tomorrow at 2:30 and is an Ask Me Anything session. It will be hosted by our public affairs lead in Canada, Mike College, and he'll be talking with our global public affairs lead, Daryl Bricker. Then I'll be back on April 28th at 1:30 to host a session with Asad Amin, who's going to be talking about the new food service landscape. Please do watch for our invitations. Thank you for joining this session, and we look forward to hearing and speaking to you soon. Thank you again, David. Bye, everybody, and stay safe.
Thank you, everyone, for today's section. Thanks, Steve. Thank you.